Hey everybody, Jay Schlansky here from the Fifth Trooper Network. I just want to take a moment to thank you for checking out this show. Did you know that over at thefifthtrooper.com we have tons of other content, including blogs, other podcasts, all kinds of stuff. In addition, if you want access to exclusive content, you can join us on patreon.com/thefifthtrooper and join at any level and you'll get access to exclusive blog articles, access to our private Discord, and much more. So please check us out, and thank you so much for all your support.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and Tim. How's it going, gentlemen?
Hey.
Heyo.
Just living in this Legion verse, and you all got to deal with it.
Yep. How was last week?
Last week was great.
Awesome.
Last week was great.
Last week was a month ago.
Yeah, I feel that. It does feel like a long time ago. I don't know why. It's just kind of. I've been like sick the last week, so apologies if I cough. But
Yeah,
it felt like an eternity.
Yeah, that's why I missed last week, and I still have a cough. It's just that time of year where you get something and it just like doesn't go away, or it just morphs into something else. And
Yeah,
I'm with you. Although the temperature is not caught up. Maybe it has for you, Tim, but it was like 70 degrees here this weekend.
it was great. It was so wonderful. It was kind of cold today.
It was like 55.
It is currently 3 degrees. So that'd be 36 Fahrenheit out.
Okay, 36 freedom units.
Let me put it this way: my air conditioning is still going. So
because your apartment is like doesn't turn the heat on until December or something.
Well, my apartment's heat is on. That's why the air conditioning is also on. I know that that's terrible, but here's the issue: I'm in one of those old buildings that there's no thermostat in my apartment, so the radiators are just always on, like full bore, as soon as we enter the winter. So if I don't have the AC on, it's like 110 degrees in here at all times.
That does sound uncomfortable.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I like it to be warm, just not like boiling in the desert warm,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I am opposite. I live in our basement, and I just flipped the duct in the basement. It can be open or closed, and in the winter I have it closed, then the hot air comes in, and in the summer I have it open to let AC in. So I like it like 16 Celsius, whatever that is in freedom units.
Yeah, I was gonna say that means nothing to me.
Yeah.
I have no idea what 16. I mean, I guess
cold.
Zero is 32, right? So that means it's more than 32, I guess.
It's more than 32. It's less than 212 because I know that that's 100. So
I should just start giving all my temperatures in Kelvin.
Is that more or less helpful than Celsius?
Kelvin is just Celsius shifted.
Starting at, well, it's the same. It's what scientific is often it because it's absolute zero is 0 Kelvin.
Yeah. But that's like
instead of
-500
the freezing point of water
something
being 0.
Yeah.
Celsius. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Celsius is how water feels. Fahrenheit is how you Americans feel, and Kelvin is how the molecules feel.
Yeah. Got it. All right. I'm sure I knew all that at some point in my existence, but I have not taken a science class since high school. So, although I have been really enjoying those Andy Weir books that are very science heavy.
There you
go. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, nor Legion. So today in Legion, we're going to talk about Geonosians because we got an actual ship date for them, release date, which is what, February 29th?
February 29th, which I believe is roughly a month before Worlds.
Yep. So
I do kind of love that it's February 29th, so even though it's real, it sounds fake.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep. Yeah, it's a leap year. So all you people out there that
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, all you people out there that were born on February 29th, this is your release. Anyway, yeah, a month before Worlds, which is significant. I think based on the timelines they gave us at Ministrav, that means it's going to be like the only new release before Worlds.
I think Inquisitors are going to be like real coin flippy.
I guess that's possible. We could get like a March 20th Inquisitor release date or something like that.
Totally. I don't know what the exact dates for Worlds are, but I mean, I think I personally would prefer if Inquisitors maybe missed this World cycle for what I think are obvious reasons. But
I think you're unique in that particular viewpoint either.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think I don't know, whatever. But
and frankly, ironically, obviously you're currently a Yoda player. I think Yoda is one of the least affected Force users.
Well, I think Yoda's gonna trash them. So I'm not like particularly worried about it, but I just like, I actually this is going to be maybe a take that is more hot than that. I kind of wish with Geonosians coming out as late as they are, that they would just wait until Worlds to release them too. I know that that's probably not, people are like, give us more releases and it'll have been like 3 months until we get a release. But at this point, I'm just kind of like, if this is what the meta is going to be, let's just like let this be the meta at Worlds, and then we can learn a new meta in the new season, and like everything's fine and dandy. Not that I think Geonosians are really going to shake it up, but
that's fair. I mean, last year we got a rulebook overhaul immediately before Worlds, so it wasn't immediately before. I guess it was a couple months, so we had LVO to kind of.
It was close enough that we had to basically relearn it. At a competitive level, you had to relearn the game, basically, maybe not completely, but in some very real ways.
In some very important aspects.
Yeah. And then Dark Troopers came out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because I remember we were in the hotel room at LVO trying to think of all the broken things you could do with Dark Troopers, and that was only a month before Worlds.
LVO's late January, so 2 months.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I think we were like getting LVO spoilers or something, or Dark Trooper spoilers while at LVO or something to that effect.
It was close in proximity.
Yeah, I just remember being in the hotel room and looking at Matt and being like, yo, I'm pretty sure we can fit 2 of these in Darth Vader in the same
list. Well, not anymore. I mean, you probably still could technically, but it would be like 6 activations.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've definitely talked about Dark Troopers a lot in the past. Let's talk about Geonosians.
Yeah.
So I agree that they're definitely not gonna shake things up as much as Dark Troopers did, as much as Inquisitors will. But I think they give the Separatists excuse me, some interesting options. What do you guys, let's talk about this in 2 different ways, because I think how good they are depends, at least in my opinion, on which one of these ways you want to field them. The first is in something that is akin to like there's no official Geonosian battle force, but there is one that's kind of built into the structure of like Poggle and Sunfac and how you would run such a list, and how those 2 characters work. And then there's kind of just like existing droid list with Geonosians sprinkled in. And I think those are essentially 2 different ways you could do it. And personally, I think the latter is far better than the former. But I don't know. What do you guys think? and why?
Um,
And you know what? Sorry.
yeah.
Before we get into this, why don't we talk about Death from Above? Because I feel like this
Yes,
is
critical.
yeah, this is going to be fairly. I
Important.
don't think it's going to make or break how they work, because I
No,
think the primary thing about them is their speed and not this ability, but it will
Yep.
definitely be like a significant driver of whether their offense is actually any good or not.
I mean, if Death from Above works how it should, big quotation marks, then their offense is actually pretty decent. If it doesn't work, then they're pretty meh,
So what do you mean by
offensively.
work how it should, quote?
So my big old quotation, so because currently, and we just have reminder text, we don't have IRG, so we don't really know, and we don't have any foreign rulings or but Death from Above, the like TLDR is when they're above what they're shooting at, they ignore cover. They basically get blast. But what it says on the reminder text is when this unit attacks, if it's ignores cover if this unit's unit leader is overlapping a piece of non-area terrain of greater height than any terrain the defending unit's leader is overlapping. Keyword there being is defending unit overlapping terrain. Because if they say, oh, it actually has to be on terrain for Death from Above to work, then just units like on the board itself, like just on the map, aren't on terrain. So then they would be able to still get cover, which the way cover is right now, they would probably get cover. If they say terrain and it just means like in general, if the unit leader is above, like the attacking unit leader is above the other unit leader, then they don't have to worry about that weird thing. So that's the weirdness.
Can we all agree that it probably should work, that as long as you're higher than whatever you're shooting at, you get the text?
That's definitely what it should be. And I think
I'm not saying that's what it's gonna
Yeah.
be, to be clear. I just thematically, that seems like what they're going for here.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think if you wanted it to do that, you would say something like, when this unit attacks, it ignores cover if this unit leader's base is further from the table surface than the top of the defender silhouette, basically, right?
Yeah.
So,
or something like that.
I guess what I would make the case, and I don't know if we want to split hairs here, but I would make the case that no terrain kind of counts for any terrain in this definition.
I agree with that. But I think there's still like one more grade of nuance that's important for this, because what we're describing as how we feel like this should work is like, if I wish I could grab something that's
For
not a
audio
clone,
listeners,
but
Kyle
whatever.
has got
Yeah.
models. He's
let me grab somebody that's actually different here. Mortar guy. All right, these are half painted clones, and they just happen to be the closest thing that is to me. So we've got Mortar guy. He's about at my eyebrow for those that are listening, and then we've got a unit leader who's like down at my nose. Half painted clone is above. Half painted clone mortar is above half painted clone unit leader, right? So in theory, based on how we think this should ideally work, this should be like a Death from Above, no cover shot, right?
Yep.
I actually would say no, it shouldn't be.
What?
Okay.
I think they're both a height 1.
Okay, well that's kind of my point,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Is that you're talking about in the text of the rules, you're talking about the terrain's height. And terrain can be height 1, 2, or 3, or higher, I guess. In theory, I don't think I've ever seen anything higher. But you've got, unfortunately, I don't have a range ruler. I have a pen, right? You've got a range ruler. If they're within the same height band, then, that's not going to be like cover denial, right?
Yeah, I suspect you've got to be in a higher height band than the target.
So does that mean you have to be on top of height 2 terrain for this to trigger at all?
I think so.
Because if you're on the table surface, you're at height 1. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So that basically means you have to be at least 6.1 inches off the ground, basically, for this to trigger, if that's how this ends up being interpreted.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely like tend to be more of a rules lawyer than most people, but when somebody uses a term that's already defined in the rules, I think it's like I tend to take a pretty black and white like approach to it. Like if you're going to use the word greater height, and where height has already been
Correct.
defined in the
Yeah.
rules to be like height 1, 2, 3, whatever. I think it's pretty clear that you got to be at a higher height. And it's not just like wishy-washy height as far as like we've defined what height is. So like let's use the definition defined within the rule set, right?
Yeah, it's just
There's
I
precedent
think
that is not
yeah.
how the rule set sometimes works. Yes.
Let's just say that the rule set is not as married to specific usage of specific words in the way that a card game would be,
Yeah.
like it used to be. That said, I agree that it probably works like you describe. I think that people will be very confused by that.
Well, I mean, and I think if we can take some like nods from the design principles on these cards, I think this is part of the reason that they have jump 3 at all. I know that like when we originally saw these spoilers, people were like, oh my God, jump 3. But like if Death from Above is designed in such a way that you actually have to be at a higher height than whatever you're shooting, like if you ever want to trigger Death from Above on like something that's height 2, you got to be able to jump to height 3, right? Like so like jump 3 allows you to do that. So and I know that like when it originally came out, everybody was like, jump 3, when are you ever going to use it? Right. Because nobody puts height 3 terrain on their table, really, for the most part. But I think it's because those two things interact, frankly.
Yeah.
Fair.
I mean, it definitely means that I think regardless of how excuse me, regardless of how you interpret this rule, it means they're going to be terrain dependent.
Yep.
Because frankly, there are some tables that just don't have, they might have line of sight blockers, but they don't have a lot of like clean things that you can go on top of. And there are some that might have a lot of clean things that you can go on top of, but they're mostly going to be height 1, which, most of those 3D printed buildings and stuff are height 1. In some places they're height 2, but I would say generally speaking, like most Legion terrain is height 1.
Yeah, I think if we're like evaluating how Death from Above interacts with the Geonosian kit, I sort of feel like you have to look at it as like, this is a bonus. This is not why you take them. Like Death from Above is a cool keyword that obviously can be very powerful, but I suspect the amount of times you're going to be able to actually trigger it is pretty low. So there's a couple things here, right? Like, so you have to have terrain that is basically at least height 2, right? You
Yep.
also have to be range 2 of the target, which means your
Yep.
opponent can just stay away from the like obviously in some game states, like the tall pieces of terrain are going to be close to the objectives and it's going to like force fights and stuff. But like if the tall pieces of terrain are just not in relevant places on the board, like it doesn't help you, right?
Yep.
So I think you can't go into this thinking, oh, I'm going to use Death from Above to just wreck my opponents every game, because I think it's probably worse than a coin flip that you're going to trigger Death from Above more than once a game.
I tend to agree with that.
Okay.
At least in a relevant way. In maybe more to the point, I think you may have to go out of your way and make suboptimal moves to place the Geonosians in places to actually get this to get like trigger this happening at all, right? Like, oh no, the terrain is like an extra move away. I'm gonna have to get like 6 inches farther down the table than I really want to be in order to get this keyword to work, which means those other squads can move and shoot me at range 3 or something, and it's, I don't know.
It's going to be one of those dangerous keywords, sort of like infiltrate, where trying to make it happen could end up kind of shooting you in the foot. Now, I do think Death from Above aside, generally speaking, they have a lot of things going for them.
Oh yeah.
There's two things primarily, really. The first is obviously that they get a free move, which I don't think we have not seen anything like this on certainly on any spammable unit. You know, there are command cards that give you free moves. There are some abilities that essentially like transfer moves, like guidance and pull the strings. There are some abilities that increase your speed temporarily, like spur, but I don't think we've really ever seen anything that's just like a blanket. This unit can just move an extra time all the time.
Yeah, I mean it.
Oh, that speeder
this is
the
basically like having Juyo or Speeder 1 on your whole art on however many Geonosians you take, right?
yeah. Except Juyo, it doesn't even allow you to take 3 moves.
Totally.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's like better than that, but like Juyo is also attached to a force user, so it's a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, they're very speedy with the extra
Very speedy.
jump move.
Yeah, and it's definitely their primary thing. Obviously, they can't get that free jump with when they have an objective, but you can certainly like use it to get there, right?
Well,
Like you
get
can
there and
dub.
also move, claim, move. Right, because you can jump
Right.
before you get it, you claim it. So you jump to base to it. Use your first actual action to grab it, second actual action to move away, which is like about as good as you'd ever like. That's what Maul is.
That's what
uses
Juyo.
to-
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be super good at recover.
Oh yeah.
I mean, look, Maul's super good at recover, and they're basically Maul.
No, they're
For
not.
the
They're not Maul. They are not Maul. They're so
for
like
purposes of grabbing boxes.
No, they're not.
Okay,
they're
why not? Go on.
A couple things.
Uh-huh.
First
I
of
get that
all,
Maul is like marginally tougher.
Maul is marginally tougher. Let's take away the marginal toughness for a second.
Okay.
Maul is able to generate his own dodge tokens if he needs it with command cards at the top of the turn in order to make himself more resilient to fire, in addition to his marginal toughness. Secondarily, Maul has a command card that makes it so you can't shoot him after he claims the box. And I just
more
like
than range 2. I mean, if you're claiming the middle box, you're going to be at range 2 of the things that.
Well, but as soon as you activate and move away, like range 2 becomes a real problem for like actually killing him.
Sure. Yeah.
But like I don't know. Like the Geonosians, they're just a rebel trooper unit, man. And like all it takes is one standby token and that unit is gone.
They're not durable.
No. But they're also cheap enough that you could like play laterals with your Geonosians to get a box back and not feel too terrible about it. Right? Like
are they cheap though?
They're 45, so they're a little bit more than a rebel trooper unit.
Okay. I mean, I'm just thinking like with the heavy, like they're 70 points.
But why do you need to take the heavy?
Well, we can talk. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a good opening into that conversation. Like, I don't know, range 2 units for 70 points is rebel trooper body.
It's squish, very squish.
I do think part of it is that like if Death from Above works in a more than very rarely case, then heavy weapons get far more justifiable. Sure. And also like throwing a naked unit into a regular droid list, I think is very justifiable. But if you're taking heavy weapons, then you're definitely bringing like probably Poggle and or Sunfac to get some command card abilities on them, get them some tokens, and then they're a little bit more like. But I wouldn't throw like sort of right off the bat. I wouldn't throw a like heavy weapon Geonosian into like just a bunch of other droids as a one-off. Like probably not.
If you're taking them as a one-off, it's the one naked unit for recover purposes.
Basically, yeah.
I could see potentially taking 2. I think. Just because they are so fast, they're like you could kind of squeeze in like an easy breakthrough victory on like a very cagey game. You can like just double triple
Breakthrough,
move
bombing
at the end of
run.
the game.
Yeah.
Breakthrough, bombing run, get a sabotage pointed at the end. A lot of
Well,
objectives really
bombing run, they can't. They're not any faster at bombing run than. Excuse me.
Oh, right, because they can't use jump when they have.
Yeah. Now you could pick up some bombs in ways that are surprising.
Yeah.
Because you could double move to the bomb and pick it up.
Yeah.
So it makes it harder for your opponent to drop them. But yeah, I think there's kind of like. So I think if you are taking them with heavies, the fact that they have access to a essentially spammable heavy with scatter, that's a pretty rare keyword historically. It's really only on Dooku, Vader, and what is it, the shells?
The bunker bust.
I think it's the bunker buster ones.
Oh, yeah, it's those ones.
And it's definitely not as good of a keyword as it used to be. Because throwing your opponent's minis out in front of their unit leader might not actually get you an outer cover shot, but you have a much better chance of doing that than getting that outer cover shot than if you just like didn't do that, right? So you might not need a lot of death from above if you get some good scatter shots off and you throw you can also like throw them closer to your Magna Guard if you're running Magna Guard with scatter. I think there's like a possible list concept with these guys where you run a couple of them with scatter, a couple with like the spear, which we don't fully know what it does yet, and then some Magna Guard, and then you basically have the scatter guys like throw some opposing units forward with scatter. You get in there with the triple move guys with spears to tie up units, and then by the time your opponent like disentangles themselves, you've got your 3 Magna Guard right there. I
mean, I think if I were to kind of like extrapolate on that concept, I actually think like there's probably an Asajj Maul list that could really use the scatter in that it allows you to put those units closer into force push range so that you can then do some like wonky movement shenanigans with them to generate melees potentially,
especially if you take burst.
Yeah. And I think that that's obviously like a very technical list from just like making sure that you're basically using the guys that you're scattering to create like safety islands for your force users, right?
Yeah.
Which I mean I could see being good in theory. I don't know. I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around like paying 70 points for like a 5 health white save unit. That just generally it seems really expensive to me.
It's been too long since you've played Rebels or anything, because I do that all the time.
Oh, I know, and in fairness, I don't think they're very good. I did play a Rebel list at our store tournament a couple weeks ago. I was playing Luke Cassian. So I do know what it feels like, and I didn't like it at all.
I mean, the one thing these guys can do that Rebel Troopers can't is they can peekaboo.
Yes.
Now, granted, your options for that at range 2 are limited. But if there's like a good relevantly located terrain piece that your opponent just has to go within range 2 of, you can set up some Geonosians behind it and do peekaboo attacks on them and not get shot, which is obviously the best way to defend yourself. So, again, very terrain dependent. I think there's going to be some tables where you've got like a mass Geonosian list and you're just like, and then there are others where you're like, oh, well, this isn't going to do me any good.
Yeah, Geonosians are also fairly resistant to suppression because of the free move. Like there's a lot of times where you had a unit like, not that they're like, like you have a Rebel Trooper unit and they're out and they get a weird little plinky shot just to make sure that they can't shoot move or whatever.
Yep.
Whereas Geonosians, like if they're caught out and they're not able to be killed, like they can shoot move shoot, whatever, even if they're suppressed, which is not nothing.
Yeah, and they also have access to compel and Poggle. I don't know. I mean, we can talk about Poggle later, but I'm not sure that he's good enough ish. But
he doesn't seem to be good specifically for Geonosians.
yes, I guess
No.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more interested in like, I think if you're gonna do a mass Geonosian thing, I actually think the Force Spike Warrior, we haven't seen the flip side of it. But the melee profile is like not terrible. And I suspect we're gonna get an overrun attack on the other side. Which means
they've said that's what it is.
Right, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
So I actually like triple moving into melee with these guys is like also pretty powerful. Just as like a being able to stay safe situation, right?
And tie stuff up for, if you've got Molissage or Magna Guard or whatever. The Force Spike is also like a lot cheaper.
Yes,
that's only a 60-point unit instead of a 70-point unit.
Yeah,
so
I'm much more and honestly, I know that like let's just imagine for a second that like death from above is like the difference between the heavy, like the range shot on the heavy, if you take the Force Spike Warrior, is you just lose a red die and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Their normal range attack is black white. So like you're just losing a red die.
Oh yeah.
To take the Force Spike Warrior. Yeah, you're losing scatter and a red die, but like I don't know, it's 10 points on every core unit. Like that seems like I don't know if I'd pay 10 points for that, particularly if there's like additional utility on the other side of this Force Spike Warrior. So like I don't know. In let's say that the flip side of this card is bad. Like if Death from Above is good, the standard Geonosian Warrior is even better than that, right? To add range dice to your pool, if Death from Above is good, like you're looking at 56 points for a squad as opposed to 60.
yeah,
I don't know.
Just take the normal schmo.
Yeah. If we're starting to talk about like units with sharpshooter 2, 5 black, 5 white, no surge is still pretty good,
Yep.
In no cover if you can like guarantee it.
Yep.
So
yeah, I was looking at some lists with, if you do like, you can actually fit quite a lot if you just do the 60-point ones. And like if you don't take Poggle, which I don't think you should take Poggle, which we can get to in a second. But like you can take 6 Geonosians with pikes, 3 Magnas with an RPS, and a super tactical droid, and you're only at 768. So that leaves some room for upgrades, and that's 10 activations. So that's a list where you've got 6 units that have a melee engagement / tie-up range of range 3, basically. And of course you have 3 Magna Guard, so Magna Guard are great. And you've got a super tactical droid for the command cards. So I don't know. I think that could be pretty interesting. And then you've got 30 points to play with if you want upgrades, tenacity on your Magnas, or aggressive tactics or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think they could be interesting in the context of a list like that. Or potentially as a one-off scatter machine, a couple of those, or as a one-off box grabbing machine. I don't think that they're good with Pago or Sunfac.
Unreal, man. Unreal.
I mean, it seems like, I guess we can start with Poggle. Poggle seems kind of like more designed for B2s. Like he only has one card that actually even targets Geonosians. The other two are for droids. And more specifically, it seems like for B2s.
Poggle the Lesser feels like the separatist version of Commander Cody to me, in that he feels like he's being pulled in like 6 different directions, and he doesn't really nail any of them.
Yeah.
Like he kind of feels like I don't know. Compel is great, but it only works on your Geonosians. Entourage B2s, I don't know. Like fitting 7 B2s in the list is already pretty like I don't know.
If B2s ever get crazy good,
Sure.
Poggle is feeling great. But other than that, he's
I think I think what the entourage does allow you to do. Sorry, I just had a massive coughing fit. Is if B2s were decent, you could take like a mix of Geonosians and B2s up to and add up to 7. Excuse me. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
That's like when they first announced all this stuff, and I was like just looking at like what could you do with Geonosians. I was doing like Poggle, Sunfac, 6 Geonosians, and a B2. With like upgrade sprinkled in. It's just a like what can this do, and it can do that.
It can do that. Yeah, I feel like you almost have to take like 4 B2s if you're taking Poggle to get use out of that.
Yeah.
Frankly, pretty decent 4-pip.
Yeah.
Like bringing back 4 dead B2s for free would be pretty sweet.
I mean, and droids also don't hate that it's a 4-pip period.
Right.
Right. Like a lot of droid lists are wanting to slow roll anyway. So your 4 like an additional 4-pip that actually has effects is not the worst.
Yeah, throw aggressive tactics on them and you can get some surges on those B2s. Like this allows you, I mean, look, he has override. He has entourage B2s. This kind of allows you to take like the ACM T-Series list version of B2s, which is substantially cheaper. It's the typical like B2 hat version is like 95 points. Just the regular B2 with just the ACM is 69. And like if you can get them surges some other way, that's actually a pretty good attack pool. That's 3 red, and excuse me, 3. It's triple rainbow, which is an ATST. For 69 points. Now it's range
cheaper,
2, obviously.
Cheaper than those Geonosian Sonic troopers.
That's right. Yeah. So I think there's a world where you take. I think they're probably still too expensive for what you're trying to do here, but you can fit like a lot of 69 point B. I mean, you can fit 4 B2s. You can fit Poggle. You can fit. Let's see. All right, so you can fit Poggle, 3 Geonosians with pikes, 2 Magna Guard, and 4 B2s, which is 10 activations, and that's only 753. So you've got some room there for like B2 personnel upgrades for some extra Geonosians. I guess you could convert one of those B2s to a Magna Guard. There you go. That's 790. So Poggle, 3 Geonosians, 3 B2s, 3 Magna Guard.
That doesn't sound terrible.
Sound terrible, right? I mean, it doesn't sound good, but it doesn't sound terrible. I don't know.
It very much sounds like a list that like is on the bench and could easily be thrust into the limelight with a couple changes.
Yeah, some minor points cuts to B2s or something.
Yeah,
would immediately make this possibly like pretty good. Yeah. But yeah, Poggle just really seems to want to be taken with a mix of B2s and Geonosians, and B2s are just not great right now. So
I don't know. If you take 7 of them, are they good?
If you take like 7 of the ACM B2s,
yeah.
Let me see if that fits.
It should.
It does. I mean, you can take Poggle with aggressive tactics, 2 Magnas with an RPS, and 7 B2s with ACMs. It's 795. It's 10 activations.
Yeah, I mean, and you can like just like toss like Asajj and a T series in there for
Like instead of the Magnus.
no. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, like Poggle 7 super battle droids, Asajj T series, and you get force push still.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I guess Asajj's order control there is probably like just too bad.
I think my hesitation here is I don't know that like yeah, 7B2s is more than 6. But frankly, I think a super tactical droid is like a better matchup for B2s anyway.
Yeah, that's fair.
Usually.
Like their cards are better for B2s. You know, they also have override. They can also give them surges via aggressive tactics. They also have a way to give them a free order via direct. So I feel like if this were good, it would currently be a thing, right? Because you just Poggle's almost the same cost. He's only 5 points cheaper than a super tactical droid. So you literally just swap him out.
And the super tax just got a much better profile, I think, right?
Right. Yeah, you swap him out for super tack with aggressive tactics. That's exactly 800 points. Super tack with aggressive tactics, 2 magnets with RPS, 7. Well, you can't take 7 B2s. But whatever, you get the idea, right? Poggle gets you that 7th B2, which I don't know.
I don't. I think if it were already good, it might supercharge it, but I don't think 7 versus 6 is gonna make it good or not.
Right. Yeah,
think
I would
that's
love
fair.
for someone to prove me wrong. I love B2s. I have enough B2s to do this. uh, I might have to get one more if I wanted to do 7, but I definitely could run 6. I definitely could run 6 ACMs. Because back in the day I ran Maul B2s. So
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, those were good times.
Those were good times.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd love for that to be a thing. I don't know that it is. Poggle, just like you said, Mike, he feels like he's just trying to do too many different things. And
Right. Yeah.
if he were like just a Geonosian commander and he just all his stuff focused on supporting Geonosians, or if he were just like a B2 commander and all of his stuff focused on supporting B2s, I think either of those would be better than the spot he's currently in.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, as an extension on that, I just like I'm trying to imagine a world where you're ever putting Sun Fac in a list. I don't know. These characters feel like 20 to 30 points too expensive to me, and maybe that's like a little bit of an exaggeration, but
he reminds me a lot of Wicket.
yeah, that's sort of what I mean. And that like I don't know, like his gun doesn't break cover. He doesn't have sharpshooter unless he's death from above in, which again, like and his gun doesn't have pierce on it. Like you're playing 90 points.
He's never gonna kill anything with this gun.
And like how often is he gonna kill stuff in melee? Like, I don't know. He's got 5 health on white saves. Like,
and he's only got 3 dice in melee.
He's only got 3 dice in melee. They're good dice. They're pierce 1, but like the minute somebody decides to melee this guy back, he's dead. You know,
Very dead.
Like super dead.
Or if they get any dodge tokens, like
yeah. You know,
he's gonna kill like 1 model a turn, basically.
He surges to hit, not crit. You know, like he doesn't have any critical. Retinue's cool, but at that point, you're paying 200 points for Sunvac and Poggle. I don't think that's what separatists really want to be doing. You know, I think separatists sort of have like 1 slot available in their list for like the 100-point character thing.
Operative type, yeah.
Yeah, and like you can't really 2 is too much. Direct Geonosian Warriors is kind of nice, but I don't know.
It's another awkward space in that he's an operative with some commander abilities and like bad attacks. So it's, he's neither like a playmaker type operative nor a support operative, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like he's like 30% of Padme and like 40% of a bounty hunter.
I mean, he's like marginally better at grabbing a box than like a core unit, I
Sure.
guess. Like you've got cover one natively, and retinue might get you a dodge token.
Yeah.
Like
But he's definitely not better at grabbing a box than Cad Bane, who's
no.
15 more points and like actually is amazing.
Right. And will kill things and give you
Yeah.
alternate win conditions and allow you to play the board. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. He's super awkward.
I definitely think I'm looking at this Geonosians release, and I'm as like from a competitive mindset, and I'm saying, okay, the Geonosian warriors are really the things. If there is competitive viability in this release, it's in the core unit.
Yeah.
It's not in the commander or the operative. There might be, I mean, somebody might find something like very fringe, I guess, with either the commander or the operative. But if Sunfac is good, I think Poggle also probably has to be in the list.
Yeah.
Because I don't see him being good without retinue. But I just don't think Poggle's good enough to cut the mustard. Is Poggle speed 2 or speed 1? He's speed 1. He's also speed 1.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know. So does he have a turn where he like is no longer speed 1?
No.
No, but he does get the free action jump, so he can triple move speed 1. And this is another awkward thing about Poggle. He's kind of like Krennic in that none of his support abilities are like active support abilities, and his attacks are bad. So he doesn't really have anything to do with his activation, which is not like inherently bad, right? Like Krennic has gone through times in this game, and arguably could be now, like a pretty decent support commander doing nothing but like, standing by a wall and drawing with crayons on it.
Yep.
And so it's not like because he has good command cards and because Compel is good. So it's not like a commander needs to be like actively doing something with their activation to be a good commander, but I don't feel like the other things that Poggle brings to the table really justify that.
Well, and I think drawing the Krennic Poggle comparison is fair, but I also think that there's like some substantial differences. The first is that Krennic, if you're utilizing Compel in a way that is like substantive, means that you're running Imperial core units, which generally means you want to be having a gunfight at like range 3 or range 4.
Yeah.
And Compel is great when your units can be close to you, right? But Compel gets a lot worse when all of a sudden you have to like close the gap to be shooting things. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, well, a Poggle's unit card pretty much says to me, I don't want him near the enemy like battle line ever. Like if he's in range 3 or range 4 to be like shot by a couple things, he's just dead. He's 4 health with no defensive capability on his card. Like he's got to be behind a LOS block or Poggle's going to die. So, but he also wants to be close to your units that basically want to be at range 2 or in melee with the enemy in order to like be triggering Compel. So it feels kind of strange to me in that vein, in that I don't think you're going to be able to, unlike Krennic, I don't think you're going to be able to utilize Compel in the same way that Poggle is. Like if you grab a box and you're trying to get out of there, you're probably too far away from Poggle to actually use it at the beginning of your turn.
That's possible.
Yep.
Yeah. Krennic is also 10 points cheaper, and The other thing too, underrated about Krennic, not that we need to talk about Krennic today, but his pistol's pretty good.
I was gonna say,
Yes.
you were talking about Krennic just like being on a wall or whatever, and I was like, I don't know, the amount of times I've shot with Krennic, and like he pretty consistently picks up a model, you know, which, but yeah, that's like not great, but it is something you can sort of rely on, and Poggle does not do that.
No, he definitely doesn't.
You're gonna be lucky if he breaks cover. He doesn't surge to crit, which maybe is something tangentially we want to talk about. Do we feel like this is like a design choice they've made here that these characters are not surging to crit? I feel like outside of Republic, the majority of heroes surge to crit, particularly combat oriented ones, and Sunfac is like obviously supposed to be like he's supposed to be like a warrior, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Aiden and Cassian don't surge crit.
Well, that's because they have marksman.
Yeah.
I think that they're special. I'm willing to put them in a special condition box.
Sure. Cad Bane did not used to surge crit.
And he was bad,
though, right?
and he was bad. Do that.
This is sort of where I'm headed with this.
Yeah.
and I just like I don't know. Is there something I'm missing here with like separatists not surging properly?
The like one way I see it with Poggle, like doesn't come for some fact, is like Poggle has his fire support card.
Sure. Okay.
Right. So like I could understand the justification for Poggle where it's like, well, like the reason we don't for Republic is because of fire sport, and here's a fire sport, so let's not open that can of worms.
Yep.
But and like that still doesn't answer the Sun fact question.
Sure. Yeah. Not a huge deal. I'm just like a little bit curious.
Yeah.
As to like, I think these guys could have surged crit and it would have been fine. Not a big deal.
Nope.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Poggles, both their attacks would probably still just bounce off cover most of the time. Yeah. They only have like 2 or 3 dice, but
particularly with, I mean, I guess maybe it's the whole death from above thing. Maybe, I mean, I get Poggle doesn't have death from above.
No, he doesn't.
I'm looking at it. which is kind of strange, but okay.
He's got like wing arthritis. He's
no man.
I don't know. I think I'm excited for the Geonosian release because it gives me a reason to like experiment with droid lists again. But you're right. I think probably what I'll end up doing is messing around with regular Geonosians sprinkled into like other droid lists without Poggle and Sunfac.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely look, I think for the first 6 months of Geonosians being out, you can probably take a 6x Geonosian core list with a bunch of force spikes and like catch 98% of people in situations they've never encountered before and absolutely wreck some like tournaments. I think in that vein, I think that they'll probably be good for you as long as people like really haven't played against them a ton, in the same way that like if you haven't played against Ewoks and you haven't been swarmed by 14 little activations running across the board from you and ending up in melee with you and how to navigate that situation. Like I think you're going to end up in a similar, it's going to create game states that are just like you've never been in before and it's a new puzzle you have to figure out, right? But once people start playing against it, I think it's going to fall apart pretty quickly.
Yep.
Unless the alpha is good enough. And I guess going back to it, I said at the beginning of the cast that I didn't think Death from Above is maybe that important. I'm going to walk that back a little bit. Maybe like Death from Above probably does make or break them based on whether that height definition is accurate or not.
It really makes or break whether you're playing Geonosians or you're just throwing a Geonosian unit in.
Yeah.
Well, I think more specifically, it makes or breaks whether the scatter gun is any good.
True.
Because the force spike one, you're not going to care as much about that. And then if
I
you're
don't-
just taking like one off, I mean, yeah, I know the force spike guys still have decent ranged attacks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's kind of going to be three categories, right? There's the one off. They're not going to grab a box and be a nuisance on objectives. They're not going to care about whether death from above is good or not. There's the force spike spam one who will definitely like benefit from it being better because it gives you more options. And then there's the, trying to take a bunch of dudes with scatterguns, and that's going to be like either it's terrible if death from above is terrible, or it's great if death from above is great. Well, I don't want to say it'll be great, but it'll be potentially great if death from above is great. So
Something that we might have mentioned before, but I just realized myself. So the scattergun is 25 points. Putting in a force pike and a regular dude is 26 points.
Yep.
And you get more dice.
I think it's
Or
just
you get
way better.
Yeah.
and you get an extra body.
Yeah.
Extra body is important.
It totally is. And I think like with that comparison, like you really have to have a plan for scatter. It's got to be more than just like, yeah, I'm gonna scatter your dudes out. Like you really have to have a plan for how that's gonna work in your list, whether that be getting things closer to the Magna Guard or whatever. And even then, the scattergun strikes me as a one or two of, even if you are taking a bunch of Geonosians. I don't think you're taking 6 scatterguns. I think you're taking like 2 at the most, and making sure that those units are the safest units you've got so that you can reliably trigger the scatter when you need it. And kind of moving forward from there. I also just had a thought, and I don't know, tell me if I'm crazy here, gentlemen.
You're definitely crazy.
Okay, tell me if it's a bad idea. Fair point. Tell me if it's a bad idea. How different does is putting these guys in a snail tank? Is there any play there as far as like you can move once with a snail tank, disembark, and then take 2 moves?
I don't know that they need like that much more help getting there.
I don't either. I'm just
It's-
tossing it out
yeah,
there. It's
it's
like
interesting.
something we haven't seen before. And like transport rules are like one of the first things I look at breaking when we get like new abilities and stuff. And I'm just curious if there's if that strikes you guys as fancy as something that you can do with these guys.
I think that also makes your Geonosian warriors you need to keep out of line of sight, very much in sight.
That's fair.
Yeah. And snail tanks are not very durable themselves either.
No.
So yeah, I don't know. I think I'd be much more inclined to like put a B2 or something in there if you're gonna put or Black Sun if you're gonna put something in a snail tank.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think a distraction card effect slot, a unit that's gonna like take all the heat away from Geonosians would be way more important than getting the Geonosians for like that much further off the table.
That is very fair.
All right. Any further thoughts on Geonosians? I'll probably order.
I'm presently looking through all those Separatist command cards to see if I can do something broken. But the Separatist command cards, I think we said this on the last cast, they kind of just suck.
Yep.
There are the super tactical ones are good.
Yeah, I think that was the conclusion we came to on the last time, was just like the super tac cards are good, but the rest of the cards are kind of, I'm just looking for something that augments them in a support capacity.
Yeah.
There's one card that gives things like speed 1 moves or something, but that's must be in a battle force.
That's
right?
in a battle
That's
force.
battle force.
Yeah. Okay.
And most of the separatist command cards that are good, that are like support command cards, all target droids or AI units or both. So it's a little bit awkward to have some flesh bags from like an existing, you know, what thing can I break these guys with that already is within the faction kind of question, because most of the things that are already in the faction work specifically with droid troopers, which I think is a good thing for the faction design personally, but it just makes Geonosians a little bit extra awkward, particularly since, you know, there's really only like Sunfax command card and then one command card for Poggle that is coming out with their release that's like specifically for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have much rather. I think Poggle is interesting in that like he does the B2 thing. I think it would have been fine if he had like 6 command cards.
Yeah, I just like all these generics target basically the droid trooper is on every one of these cards in some capacity.
The 2 pip is for Geonosians.
Sorry, I'm talking about the generic
the generic
separatist commands. I just like, so like a lot of the generics for the other factions you can kind of like muddy the waters a little bit, right?
Right, sure.
And I don't play separatists enough to like know the very fine details of their command cards, and it appears that you really need to have a lot of droid troopers for these to work.
Yeah, which historically has not been a problem because that's been your only option, really.
Yeah.
And the reason they're like that, right, is so that you can't do something like use preservation protocols on Maul, right?
Sure. Yeah.
This
is very powerful.
It would be. Yeah, this is why we have the language that we have. And I think it's great for the faction design up until this point. It's just a little bit awkward that they're essentially getting like a brand new unit type that very little of their existing kit works with, and that brand new unit type doesn't actually get much from its release in terms of like things that are meant to support them.
Yeah. I mean, the Republic, when the Wookiees came out as their own thing, and now that kind of feels like a pseudo battle force. And
well, it's a real battle force now.
No, now it is, yeah. But like when it came out, like I'm a little bit surprised there wasn't something similar for the Geonosians where they got their own generics.
Generic Geonosian command cards. Yeah.
That being said, they could also have a Geonosian battle force that's in the works.
That's very possible.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there could easily be, like, if you want to play Geonosians, there could be a battle force coming out that has 3 to 6 command cards for you.
Yep. Which would be great.
Yeah. 100%.
All right. Well, I'll probably pick up a few boxes. I think the minis are cool.
They're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Hopefully they've got some more poses than those Ewoks. Huh?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've been putting together Ewoks. I wish I had the sprue within reaching distance, and I'm sure I know this was a discussion point when they first came out months ago, but I don't really get the repeat poses. Like there's only two sprues in the Ewok box. One of them has one of them has 3 of the quote unquote specialist units on it, right? You've got the unit leader, you've got the axe gun, you've got the tracker. So those are all you need sculpts, and then it has like a generic dude. But then the other sprue has the other 4 guys on it, and it's literally just like 2 copies of the same thing on one sprue. And I don't really. They kind of did this with pikes, although it's not as noticeable with pikes because the pike poses are a little bit more dynamic.
And they all have like different, like significantly different weapon options, I think, on the pike, on the poses. Like I think I know what you're talking about. There's 2 poses that are basically identical. One guy's holding 2 guns, and I think one guy's holding a gun and a whip.
Yeah, or you can give them like a stun baton, or you can put one of the guns in the other hand, you know. But yeah, Ewoks, it's literally just like there's 2 guys with spears in their left hands, and they're the exact same pose. And there's 2 guys with spears in their right hands, and they're the exact same pose. And if you want to make the slingers, you don't even change like the non-weapon arm. You just switch out the spear arm, and it's the same sling pose, you know, repeated twice. And I don't know. I don't get it. Especially given that these guys are the basis for like a spammable army. Like you're gonna have you know, what is that, like 2 out of 4 of your models in every Ewok unit, which is more than half your army is going to be the same 2 models copied over and over and over again, basically. I don't know.
It's like man, if you told me that we'd be complaining about this like 5 years ago when we got like these like stormtroopers that like you couldn't do anything with, they're all just the same pose. It's just kind of funny. It's great that we're in a place where we can complain about this now.
Yeah, 100%. You know, because the OG like first year poses and sculpts were like I get why they did it. They were terrible.
Yeah.
And we've improved a lot since then. But yeah, I was a little, given what I was used to with the new standard, I was a little disappointed with the Ewok poses. Let's put it that way.
I've got a few boxes of them that I haven't opened. So I got enough to put them in a contingent. I got like the E Wicket low grade box and two slingers or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, we had a second topic, but I think it's more than we've talked about Geonosians more than enough, so we can punt that one to another week. All right. Well, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
I'm Timbo.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.